Finally caught up. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the New Media Show. My name is Todd Cochran. Of course, this is our weekly jaunt into new media. And hey, this week a little different. We've got a guest, but before we introduce our guest, good morning, Rob. How are you?
Doing great, Todd. It's great to be back on the show here. We're going to do a little bit of a different topic this week. Instead of always talking about podcasting, we're going to spend a little time talking about video. So it's exciting. We've got a great guest.
Yeah, we do. So, whoop, wrong screen. I'm all thumbs here. So,
No problem.
without further ado, we want to welcome Jim Louderback. Good morning, Jim, CEO of
Good,
Vidcon.
good morning, guys. It's great to be here with you.
Yeah, glad to have you on. And I think you've been on the show. You were on the show once before, weren't you?
I'm
Yeah,
pretty
I think
sure I
so.
was. Yeah, I think I've done it back in the dim, dark recesses of the past.
Yeah. So it's been quite a while, but as we were talking just before we started the show, I see you everywhere. You're on conferences. You're all over the place. And of course, you made a big change early in the year. So I guess for the first part, for the folks that don't have any idea what VidCon even is, maybe give a little 411 on that, and then catch us up on what you've been up to.
Sure, yeah. VidCon is the world's biggest online video conference. So it happens every year in Anaheim, California, and around June. And it's actually three conferences rolled into one. It's a big, what we call the community track fan fest, where people come together who their favorite online video stars are there, whether it's Facebook or Snapchat, YouTube, Instagram, Musically, whatever. They all show up, and their fans show up, and those communities they get together and celebrate the love that they have for those creators, for the content, and for each other. Uh, we also have a large track that's focused to people who want to become the next big online video star. So that's our creator track, and that is, it's interesting. Uh, well, I don't know, when you were growing up, when I was growing up, we all wanted to be, actors or spacemen or or doctors or lawyers or dentists. The number one thing that 10 to 20-year-olds want to be right now is a vlogger and a YouTuber. So we allow people to develop those skills. And then we have an industry track, which is all about how do you make money on all of this stuff. So that's VidCon. We just launched this year in Australia and Europe. That went really well. We're going back in 2018. And for me personally, I ran an online video company called Revision 3, and I've done a ton of stuff in the before that. But as we were running the Revision 3, which was started out with video podcasting and ended up doing YouTube and a bunch of other things as well. As VidCon came out, and it's the ninth one coming up in 2018, we sponsored, I spoke at it. And then a couple years ago, I started running the industry track. And so I knew these guys really well and built the industry track up into the premier online video conference for business. And then a couple months ago, Hank Green started up, said, I've been running this for the last 8 years. I really want to focus on the other five businesses I have and the creator part of VidCon, and want to know if I want to come in and run the whole thing. And it took me about 10 seconds, and I said yes.
Well, that's cool. And you've got, you've been involved really in the online media space for God since the beginning. And you've got good roots and even what happened in the beginning in podcasting and everything else too. So I'm excited to be able to have you on today because I think we really want to focus on what's possible today with video. And like Rob and I, we've been doing this little thing here for, gosh, I don't even know how many years now, Rob, but a while. But I know that I've been
Yeah.
doing video on my personal podcast since about episode like 650 or 660, and I just went over 1,200 some episodes. So
Wow, congrats.
yeah, it's kind of crazy. And actually 13 years in this space. It's really insane. But
Well,
Rob,
it's good.
go,
We were talking about your tech beforehand, and the fact that you're running off a TriCaster when I was at PC Magazine, and we first started doing our first online video podcasting, or our video podcasting, which is probably 2003, 2004. We were the first people to actually get a TriCaster. I reviewed it. I think I was the first person to review it, and I realized that, oh my gosh, we could do all the stuff we did at this online video network, Tech TV, that I ran content at, which got shut down unfortunately. And so we pulled the TriCaster out and started doing video with it. It was amazing, and so it's so interesting that it still works and it's much more advanced. This looks a lot better than it did back in 2003, 2004.
y-
But it's great to see.
It's amazing. The team over there at New Tech, they've got this incredible upgrade policy. In years past, what I did, I kind of started out with their low end unit, and as I could afford it, I upgraded. And for about the past 3 or 4 years, I've been on a system called their 860, which is a beast. It's an incredible box, and we take it to shows, and it just doesn't travel so well. But I've got a thing, it's called a mini that we
Hmm.
roll around
Yep.
in a case, and that works good. But I get a little bit worried because this thing's getting a little long in the tooth, and it's just a computer with a lot of cards in it, and it's still supported, but it's out of warranty. And if I need to fix it, it's gonna be 2, 3 grand to get it in and get it fixed. And I heard somewhere that they were having a new upgrade promotion where you could get $5,000 off a new unit, which are cheaper than what I paid for this unit, and still have
Hmm.
the same functionality, and keep the old unit. I was like, you gotta be kidding me. So once you do the upgrade, you don't get new upgrades for licenses or anything like that. So it's locked in place, and you take it till it dies. But um, the way the aftermarket is, if I have something die, I'll just go on eBay and see if I can buy something. So who knows? But yeah, so we're gonna move up to the TC, what they call the TC1, and
Nice.
it's more of a, not necessarily feature for me. It's not gonna be a feature upgrade, but it's gonna be just a hardware obsolescence upgrade is really what it is. So for
Yeah,
me,
it's funny. I'm sitting here in my home office and I look up. I've got an old TriCaster Studio sitting up
oh,
on one of the shelves
that's
up there.
funny.
It's an old SD machine. It was one of
Yeah,
the machines we used a lot back in like 2007, 2008. But
yeah. That
good
was
stuff.
that was like a $10,000 or $12,000 machine back then. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yep.
very cool. Well, anyway, Rob, we've been ignoring you. Jim and I just
No,
decided
that's
you weren't
fine.
even part of the show today.
Geeking out on hardware.
No, that's fine. Geeking out on video gear here.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I wanted to just kind of add something to the conversation here. I know as you think back to the early days of podcasting, the whole video side was actually fairly strong. Back in the early days, I know Jim, you built the Revision 3 network, then what was sold to the Discovery Channel folks, and had a whole bunch of online video podcasts that was really popular. And Apple still supports video podcasts in their iTunes software. Um, but you know, where are we today, Jim? I mean, on the whole video podcasting thing, is it something that still has some legs, or do you think very soon Apple is just going to remove video podcasting from its platform? Is there any thoughts that you have?
And I have no inside knowledge on it at all, but video podcasting, we got into it initially because the video files were too big to stream, right? So if you did
Yeah.
I mean, you guys both remember 2003, 2004, 2005, bandwidth wasn't what it is to people's houses, um, or wherever. And
Mm.
so you wanted to watch a video show, you had to download it and watch it later. And so podcasting was awesome because, you can download it and it just sits there and you come home or you get your phone or whatever and it's there and you watch it and it's awesome.
Yeah.
With
Yeah.
streaming now and with the advances in streaming technology and the advances in bandwidth to people's homes and phones and everything, you don't really need that sort of download watch later. You don't need it for audio either. Um, but
Yeah.
there are so many different ways to do it. I mean, you're on, YouTube and Facebook and you could be on Lively and Twitter and so many different sources live. But there's still that something to be said for that on-demand download, watch later, DVR sort of approach. And if I were Apple, I would just think of it as just another way to get content into the Apple ecosystem. And Apple's got a lot of things that they're working on, but to do more in video, and this is just one of them. So I don't think it's going to change, but you never know.
The challenge with doing video, and let's be frank, I've got the resources of a hosting company behind me, and I can basically, drop a 1.6 or 1.7 gig file up on our CDN, and for me, it's as the owner of the company, I have some advantages that other podcasters don't because I don't have to really necessarily worry about the media file size. But if I was a complete independent, and I do pay for my bandwidth over there, so it's not like I get a free ride. I walk the walk and talk the talk. But if If I was an average podcaster and looking at pushing video online, for a long time I put everything up at 640 by 360 just to keep the file size down, so that the bandwidth bill wouldn't get hammered so bad. But that's part of this issue. Is That's why YouTube and live stream and Vimeo and all those folks are so popular. Is that people just put them up there and they don't have to really pay. Well, not necessarily live stream. You have to pay, but you can put some media up there at a relatively good price, and with YouTube it's free, and you don't have to worry. But if you want to make it available as a download, that file still has to sit on a CDN somewhere. So you're talking about a much bigger file, obviously, if you want some quality. So that is probably the biggest limiting factor of a lot of folks doing video today.
Yeah, it's funny. They're still huge files,
Yeah,
and they still cost a lot to move around.
they do. And compared to
Well,
that.
and Todd,
Go ahead, Rob.
oh, yeah, I was just saying, I think there's an expectation now of higher quality too, and we're moving into an era where more and more people are expecting 4K video. And Jim, how do you think that 4K video is eventually gonna really have an impact on this whole kind of on-demand video space?
Well, I think there are lots of changes that are happening in video. 4K is one of them that I think more and more people will demand it over time. I mean, you look at what most people are running now. Your monitors aren't 4K yet. Your phone certainly not that big of a difference between 4K and 1920.
Yeah.
There's but again, as the world moves forward, remember when we went from SD to HD, the TriCaster I was talking about that's sitting in the shelves above me is an old SD one.
Yep.
I'm not going to use that again, even though it creates a perfectly good signal and it works fine. It's still an SD system. And so we went SD to HD. We're moving to 4K, but it'll be slower. I think the benefits of going from SD to HD are, even though the frame size is so much bigger when you move to 4K, not as big a deal. What I do think that'll be interesting though is if you look at VR and AR, people start to think about, well, I want to, I don't just want to watch this podcast. I want to be inside of it.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be, sitting there with you guys. We'll see how that goes. But that'll also require a step up in bandwidth and processing power and technology too.
It also means cleaning the office, so I can't control the shot. Here you see this window of an area that looks relatively clean, but you can't see the mess that's over here. So
Yeah, exactly. And I'd have to keep my dog out of the shot because the dog's like sleeping right over here. So
he's cute.
yeah, there you go.
So, yeah, I think this whole concept of 360-degree views, the viewer is in more control, right, of their viewing experience. I mean, is that really going to come to on-demand audio experiences? I mean, I guess that wouldn't be on demand. That would have to be live, wouldn't it? Or can it be on demand and still have that?
Well, you can definitely I mean, audio is one thing, right? I mean, an audio experience. Yeah. But if you look at a video experience, you can do it on demand. I mean, the thing about VR right now is it's much more in the early days of video podcasting where you put your video out there so that it could be downloaded and watched later via iTunes and other things, just because there wasn't enough bandwidth to stream. VR in many ways is that way. You want a true VR experience. There are a couple people that are doing a little bit of live stuff, including, interestingly, Halsey Minor, the guy who started CNET, as a company called Live Planet that does everything, soup to nuts. Yeah. But most people are either doing really, really low bandwidth VR live, or it's only 180 degrees, not 360 degrees. But over time, that will change too.
I saw, I was at, where was it? I think it was NAB, and someone had a 360 camera that they were kind of making as an accessory shot, but this was a radio guy, and he was not really having, focused cameras like this, so he was using that VR camera more to give whoever was tuning in on his live stream to kind of be able to pan around and see the show. So that was kind of an interesting use of VR, but he was up against a wall, so as I was looking at his picture, I was like, half of it's wall, this is not very compelling. But if you were in the middle of a show floor or something like that where your VR camera was up and you could see some encompassing surrounding area, that was pretty cool and was a different type of view. But there's about 25 different ways to mix it up. But those 360 cameras are pretty awesome. I don't know if they make any. Do they have any now that even have an SDI output, or I I haven't been keeping
I
aware of it.
don't know. I know what we are seeing is, in addition to 360, 180. So you look at, so YouTube's gotten behind this 180 VR format, which is a lot easier to shoot because again, it's just
Yeah,
this far around, so you can actually shoot it. You can have somebody behind you looking at it. You know, it's hard. It's hard to do 360 because your producers and your cameramen, they can't really be in the shot.
that's right.
So um, it, we're still in the early days of this,
Yeah.
but it's coming, and it's gonna enable. Look, the experiences that you can do with VR, you don't just want to replicate an experience like this anyway. I mean, that's to me that's a bad thing. And the I heard somebody using the acronym when it comes to what to do in VR. It's RIDE, RIDE. So rare, impossible, dangerous, or expensive. Those are the things that you want to do in VR. And you think about it, it's like, I'm never going to go to Mars,
Right.
but a VR experience can take me there. It's impossible.
Yeah.
I'm never going to go swimming with the sharks
Hmm.
with a bunch of chum hanging off my belt. But you can do that in VR. That's dangerous, etc.
And that's actually pretty cool, compelling content without having to risk life or limb.
Exactly. Sign me up.
One thing that, just from my experience, and I was early doing video from I guess from a podcasting person. Well, maybe not, but there wasn't a lot. You guys were doing it huge at Revision 3, and you're still was pushing audio. So maybe I was late to the game. Let me just say it that way then.
Yeah, you've been doing this for 13 years. You were early.
Right. Well, the audio, yeah. But, the video part, when I started the video part, it was just an experiment. It was like, I'm just going to try this and see how it works. And, you learn stuff little by little, and you're looking at the audience numbers, and you're thinking in those early days, and I did several presentations on this. I'm like, man, this is really not worth doing the extra effort because there's just not a lot of people watching. But then over time, and why in the heck they want to watch Rob and I or me here, on video, it's kind of weird because we're doing, a lot of just talk and there's not a lot of action going on. But I found the audience doing about a 65-35, and that's where it stayed for years. That's where it's been. The audio audience is 65% and the video audience is at 35. And actually kind of happy that it's at that split because, the costs go up the more audience that actually watch. But for me, it really, what the realization was, is some people like to listen, some people like to watch, and some people like to read, and that they're kind of in their own ways. And it takes a lot to sit down and watch 90 minutes of video of two dudes talking about the podcasting space, but it's easier to listen. So when you guys were doing your stuff at Revision 3, you, you were really very short, concise content. There was no like 1 hour shows, were there?
Um, yeah, we did have, look, Dignation,
Oh,
which was
that's
one of
true.
our primary shows, really was, it was two dudes sitting on a couch drinking beer and talking
Yeah,
about the tech stories of the day. And what we did do though with Dignation is we produced it, right? So there's a lot of things that you can do with the TriCaster now live that we did some of that. We use the TriCaster a lot in our production. But we would also put it in post where we would drop things in, we drop in images and other things to try and make it more of a visually produced experience
sure.
rather than just,
Two
three
dudes.
guys talking and
Yeah,
switching between the three of them. And so we tried to make it more to feel more like a television experience and a television, but more produced experience. But most of the stuff we did, and over time it got shorter because as we started going up on YouTube and spending more time with YouTube, that was back in the day when YouTube really wanted you 2, 3, 4 minutes max, rather than the longer stuff that YouTube is now actually supporting and they're actually encouraging you to do now.
did you guys find then? Do you remember what the split was on audience, on how many people watched or listened, where it kind of fell out?
We actually didn't push much audio out.
Oh,
We pushed audio on Dignation because people wanted it and expected it, but it was
Hmm.
no more than 5 or 10%. We were pretty consistently. We want to be video, not audio.
right. Whereas Leo, I
Yeah,
think.
I mean, and
Go ahead, Rob.
yeah, well, I was just going to comment that I think a lot of the reason for that, Jim, is that a lot of what you're doing with the video was very, very visual. So, I mean, there would be something lost in a lot of your revision 3 shows if it was just audio. Where I think where we come from anyway is doing a show that's primarily audio and then maybe adding video to that. So it's a little bit of a different orientation. I think you came from it more from a or probably more from a television perspective than from a radio perspective. And I want you to talk a little about that. I mean, is that going on today as much as it was back when you were doing revision 3? And how has it changed? Is it just, I mean, obviously it's moved over to YouTube, but I want you to talk about that difference between doing it primarily for audio or doing it primarily for a visual experience.
Yeah, and look, we've seen a lot of changes come out with Facebook Live and YouTube Live and Twitch, where people are doing this sort of live streaming like this, where you're not highly producing it. And we all came out of a television background, and so
Yeah.
we really wanted to recreate the sort of wonder and joy of Tech TV and ZDTV, which Leo was a part of as well,
Hmm.
in this new format and this new way, and stream it directly, so we wouldn't have all those costs. But the one interesting aspect of video versus audio, and one of the real reasons, I mean, and I can say this now that you know, it's not an issue with any of our advertisers or anybody anymore. One of the real reasons why we did video is because we sold every impression as a video impression, and video is a far more impactful advertising means, especially with the in-show sponsorships that we did versus
Hmm.
audio. We could get a higher cost per thousand viewers. And we sold it as a more premium experience than audio only. Now, there are certainly things you can do in audio only that are as good or in some ways better than video. But it was a new medium. Everybody was interested in experimenting with video online. And so Brad Murphy, our head of sales, did an amazing job of selling people on the dream of video. And we did a great job on delivering on that dream. But we were very much a video sell. And so that's why we didn't focus on audio in many ways. We would have those discussions. Should we just put it out as an audio podcast? And Brad would always say no, because the advertisers won't pay for it and won't have the same impact. And we're selling video. And we're like, yep, revenue's important. Okay, we're doing video.
One thing that I've noticed is, I attempted to do some vlogging, traditional vlogging, and it's tough. It's it takes a lot of practice. And you look at guys like these YouTube stars like Casey Neistat, and you look at John Olson. You look at some of these guys that are doing tutorials like Peter McKinnon and some of those folks, and these guys just rock it. I mean, they do incredible videos. I know they're highly edited. They got, probably a team or a video, someone that actually is doing the video cuts. Although I think Casey does most of his editing, maybe not as much now, but you look at these guys and they make it look so easy. But when for VidCon, when you guys are doing your conference, is this the goal? Is to teach and give this, teach the skills and to become the next YouTube star? Is that the primary objective?
Yeah, well, like I said before, we have three tracks. So we have, the community track is just about celebrating. So it's Casey's fans and everybody else comes together and celebrates that. But the creator track very much is around all the aspects of it. So, typically the people who tend to creator track they have 10 to 50,000 subscribers on YouTube or something similar on other social platforms,
Hmm.
and they want to learn from the experts. So they want to learn from the folks that have already been there, and it's certainly we have sessions on video editing and audio design and those sorts of production techniques. But we also do things on audience development. Like, how do you build an audience? How do you take advantage of the way that the algorithms work on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter and Snapchat and those different platforms? What's your what's your team look like? And so, for somebody who's just starting out, as they grow up, suddenly they might have a manager or an agent, or there are various different influencer platforms that they may be approached by. So we try and get people to understand all that. And then we also do inspirational stuff there as well. And so that, as we think about helping people to get the skills to become where they want to go, not everybody wants to be, the top world class star. Some people just want to celebrate the things that they love and build an audience around them of people that love the same thing. We want to support all of that, and we do.
And I also think, I try to, because I've been doing a lot of I watch more YouTube now than I used to, and I shouldn't admit that because I'm a podcaster. I'm supposed to be listening to more stuff, but there's certain personality traits too. That you're looking at a lot of these content creators. You never see them down. Maybe once in a while, but they're not down. They're always up. They're excited. And that's what you want. You don't want to watch someone be a drag, obviously, but also personality. I think personalities, is the same type of thing in podcasting. If you're boring, people are going to go away. But it's you just kind of look at these folks as traits, and traits. You can tell that they're all go getters. They're hard charging. These aren't guys that sleep in on Sunday mornings. These are the guys that get up and turn to. So, and gals as well. But I don't know, Rob. What do you watch much YouTube at all, and watch much video at all?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think for me, YouTube has really turned into like maybe a skills training platform. So if there's a particular thing that I need to know how to do, I usually just go in there and search for it because there's usually somebody that's done some sort of a online tutorial or demo or some sort of a training on how to do something. And I think it's really turned into be kind of like a Swiss Army knife for solving life's problems. I mean, that's how I look at YouTube. And Jim, why don't you tell us a little bit about maybe you had alluded to how longer form content is coming into YouTube. I know we all, Todd and I came through this era with YouTube, like you were saying earlier, that it being 3 to 5 minute content. But it sounds like what you're saying is that it's becoming much more than that.
Well, what YouTube has done, and they control their algorithm, right? So they are favoring these days longer content,
Hmm.
and they are favoring content that is consistent over time. So it used
Yeah.
to be that you would build an audience with 1, 2, 3 minute videos, short, fast, get it up there. But what YouTube has realized is that the most important thing for them is watch time and watch session
Mhm.
length. So they're rewarding videos that keep and engage people for longer amounts of time. So it's not just longer videos. You got to have people watch them for
Hmm.
how long did somebody watch that long video? Um, so the people who do it and then do it consistently. So doing 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 videos a week or more in the 7 to 15 minute range that people watch all the way through that are consistent on topic. And that's what YouTube is rewarding. And the reason why is because they'd look at the numbers and say, well, people would spend a half hour with YouTube a day, but they're still spending 7 or 8 hours with television. And they're like, we want a bigger part of that attention because the more time you spend with YouTube, the more ads we can serve you. The more ads we serve you, the more revenue we get. So just like television tries to suck you in and keep you there with the promos and coming up next, and after this break, YouTube wants that same sort of thing. And so they've been driving this watch time, watch session is, for example, you start watching. I go to YouTube and I start watching a video, and then I watch another video, and then I watch another video, and then I watch another video, and then I leave. Well, if you're the last video in that chain, that's bad because that means somebody watched that video and they're like, "Ah, I'm done with YouTube. I'm going to do something else."
Oh.
Whereas if you're the first one and somebody has a long session or you move somebody to the next video, so that session that your video is in is also a really, really important thing to YouTube because they want to keep you on platform as long as they can. So algorithmic changes inside YouTube to favor YouTube's business model, which is an ad-supported business model mostly, although they've been moving more into things like YouTube Red and YouTube TV that are more pay a monthly fee. The more time you spend on platform, the more ads they can serve you, the more profitable it is, and they're going to reward the people who make them more money.
Oh, it makes sense though, because just like this morning, while I was getting show prep done, I had a series that I was behind on, and I just I hit play and let them catch up. I was sitting here letting them play through. So I didn't jump to a different channel, so I guess that guy did okay with me. But YouTube wanted
Oh
me
yeah,
to.
if you watched multiple ones of his video and you were on for a long time, or her video, that YouTube loves that. But even if you're bouncing from creator to creator and channel to channel, but you do it for an hour, that's also a great thing for YouTube.
Yeah. And I'm actually being nice now. I'm not skipping the ads because I know these creators over at YouTube having a little bit of challenges with their monetization scheme, and quite frankly, a bunch of them got screwed. And I'm, so in just like I want my listeners to support my sponsors, so I'm, paying back in kind. I'm letting that 1 minute video run. Now I may not be watching it, but at least it runs, and they're going to get credit for it and get payments. So I think if you have a creator over there, it's advisable not to skip the ads, even though it may annoy you. But yeah, the whole model over there is definitely interesting, and they control. They're the gatekeepers. So with live stream, well, I guess Vimeo buying live stream. What was your what's your what's your take on that move?
Well, let's talk about, Vimeo overall has been a company that has been trying to figure out where they fit in the online video ecosystem, right? So for a while, and it still is, it was a great place to put high quality video that you would
Hmm.
share with people, maybe a pilot of a TV show or a sizzle reel that you wanted to show somebody you want the best quality possible. You want to get it up there. You want to control the experience, maybe password protect it. Then they started saying, well, maybe we'll put in real shows and build a big, like, like we'll be a Netflix style thing. And now it's like, well, maybe we'll be a live video thing. I worry that Vimeo becomes the business model of the day and that they don't know what they become.
Hmm.
So we'll see.
Where most folks, and me included, because I'm not in the YouTube ecosphere. So the first two live or the first two platforms I think about for putting videos up are definitely YouTube and Vimeo. Where's the up and coming place? Where's the place you're telling people to go to get your content to make sure it's stashed over there as well? Is there other platforms that people need to be paying attention to?
Well, yeah, depending on the type of stuff you're doing, certainly YouTube's important. Vimeo is still a great place to put your content and keep it, and particularly if you're paying them and you've got a great experience, you can curate yourself there that you own in many ways.
Right.
But look, Facebook, uh,
Yeah.
you know, Twitter wants to be something. They're also, what do you want to do with video? I don't know. We'll find out. Um, but Instagram is doing a great job with video, and we're seeing more and more video on Instagram. Um, Certainly, Snapchat continues to drive great growth and use in the teen and early 20 space. Vertical video, yes, but it's an interesting spot to check out. I think Twitch is a huge, huge. There's a big opportunity there beyond gaming at Twitch, and I think that we're starting to see that play out. It's certainly still a huge gaming platform, but there's more and more going on there that's not gaming. And Amazon in general is trying to figure out how they sort of go after this space. And so there's Amazon Video Direct, where a lot of the folks who are YouTube creators and others were putting their shows and getting some value out of it. There's Twitch. I'm not sure how that's going to play out internally at Amazon, but you can expect Amazon will continue to be an interesting player. And then there's some up and comers. So Musically and Lively are certainly interesting. We're starting and then to look a little bit further in the future, we're starting to see people using cryptocurrency and coming up with their own tokens that they can use to enable an ecosystem between viewers, fans, creators that doesn't involve any of these platforms at all, and that doesn't involve advertising at all. And so one of the more popular platforms the last couple of years that has plateaued a little bit is YouNow. But YouNow is they're getting ready to put their token system together, and they're called props, and it's going to be interesting to see that develop. There's a couple of others that I know that are looking at how do we create a connection between audience and creators that doesn't include YouTube and other gatekeepers that are taking 30% or 40% or 50% of revenue, and allow that connection to happen directly. And so I'm really interested to see how that develops. I also think we're in a cryptocurrency bubble, so it's going to impede some of it, but lots of interesting stuff happening there.
Yes, and I am quite happy with the bitcoins that I got in the early days. So
How much did you get?
enough.
I I bought $10 worth in the early days. Stupid me.
Oh
It's
my
now worth
God.
$400.
It's
Like, what
just,
was I thinking?
yeah. Yeah, it's like all of us were the same because my daughter texted me the other day and she said, Dad, have you heard about this Bitcoin thing? I'm like, yeah. Do you have some Bitcoins? Yeah. And she's like, how many? And I said, that's for Dad to know. and but
Not for you. No.
I've
Yeah.
actually sold a couple because I just don't know if this is going to last. If this, this crazy, $5,000-6,000 mark is
I
gonna
think that's
stay.
well. Look, I and don't take investing advice from me, but I think it's smart that if you get an asset like that that goes up pretty dramatically, to sell some of it and
Ye-
hold on to some of it, but
yeah.
take some of your winnings off the table.
Yes.
It's like Vegas, right? You got to run on the crap table. Take some winnings off the table
Yeah. Yeah.
and cash it out and pay for your hotel room.
Actually, need a new kitchen and a couple of bathrooms. So yeah.
Yeah, my Bitcoin's gonna buy me a nice dinner at a good restaurant, but that's okay.
Yeah, it is. One thing
So,
that.
hey Todd,
Go ahead,
so
Rob.
we've alluded to a challenge that exists on YouTube around monetization. Why don't we talk about that? What's going on at YouTube? I've heard lots of content creators say, excuse me, that they've had a problem with declining revenues. Jim, can you talk about that? What is happening over there that's causing it? Is it just the the payouts are dropping from YouTube, or is it something else going on?
Well, there a couple different things have been going on over the last 6 or 9 months. I think we've been through like three phases of the sky is falling on revenue at YouTube. What are we going to do? And not to make light of the problem because it is still a big problem. But we had an issue last summer, or maybe earlier than that, where um, a lot of the I forget the organization, but they went out and were saying, "Oh, look at this! This ad is running in front of this awful content." So whether it was neo-Nazi content or racist content or whatever, and they would pick one little tiny ad at one time and show it running in front of this thing. And so YouTube, as a lot of and that got a number of large advertisers to pull off of YouTube, because YouTube could not guarantee that 100% of your ads would run on safe content. So we had a bunch of big advertisers pull out. YouTube started building more and more technology to be able to determine what sorts of content was offensive or had bad words or was this or that. So as they rolled this stuff out, the pendulum swung the other way a little bit. Now most of these advertisers have come back, but it's content that could potentially be considered maybe offensive to one person out there somewhere in the world now wasn't getting any advertising. So we started to see more and more videos being turned off for monetization for reasons that made no sense at all. So it might be somebody at LGBT talking just personally about their experiences and helping other people and very popular, but those were turned off. A lot of those were turned off for monetization, which caused a big upheaval and a hue and cry on the other side. So if you're an advertiser, you don't want your content to show up next to things that are bad for your brand. I mean, this is going on for a long time. We used to do a lot of stuff around this at Revision 3. You don't want it next to your competitors. You want it next to something that's going to, that will create the impression when somebody looks at your brand and looks at that content that you support that content. Um, so that sort of we're moving beyond that, but that's been a big part of some of the monetization issues. And there are some people that are doing things that are frankly offensive that maybe advertising shouldn't be next to it. And so that I support. But as with YouTube, when you have technological solutions and you have how many hours of video get uploaded every minute? Is it like, or every second? Is it like 24, 36? I don't know. But when you have that much video entering your system every second, you can't look at everything. So you have to have algorithmic ways to determine it. And YouTube continues to make their algorithms better and better, but they're not perfect.
And there was discussion that, Rob, I was watching the Phalanx that happened, and of course I was, being a little bit tongue in cheek because I was like, control your content, control your brand, you have a .com, all that stuff I've been saying for the last, feels like 20 years. I'm kind of like, okay, you're at the mercy of a platform that they can do whatever they want, but if you want to have this big exposure, that's where you got to be. And folks were talking about 80% cut in revenue. Huge, huge, huge impact. So, um, and some of the instigators that set some of this off were hurt even more. Meaning, there was even some people lost some deals or some stuff they said as they probably rightly should have. But I think that's where the power of podcasting still is good. Now, podcasting in itself then is got its own challenges in monetization across the greater group. Even my little YouTube video that we'll put up here that won't get a lot of views because most of this content is consumed via download. It's gonna make a couple of bucks on YouTube. Whereas if I don't put any ads in this podcast, $0, right? So that does YouTube does have that going with them to a certain extent. But I like the cryptocurrency thing. I think that's cool. But getting an audience to support a show by making donations, that's a tough row to hoe. People just are not used to paying. They really aren't. I still have my doubts on that model.
Well, I think, look, things are changing, and look at Patreon, for example. Patreon has done a great job turning people into patrons and having people support shows. And so, for example, we were talking about the early days of Tech TV and Revision 3 and some of the stuff we did at PC Mag. Patrick Norton, who I worked with for a long time at all those places, is now, he's doing this tech thing, video, podcast, show, whatever, and he's doing well on Patreon. And so he's got people, paying. He's got advertising and other things that
Right.
associated with it as well. But Patreon is a part of the revenue mix. And so when you think about the revenue mix that you want to build, and that's another interesting topic, you cannot rely on advertising as your sole source of revenue,
Right.
because interruption advertising is clearly on decline. I mean, you talk to teens and millennials and people in their 20s, and they don't want to be interrupted by ads. Heck, I reviewed the first TiVo back in 2000, 2001 when it came out. It was 99. And the best thing about it was that you could skip ads. It had 30-second skip on it. Well, Replay TV, but TiVo had it as well. It's just hidden, still hidden, but you can do it. And that was all about getting rid of the interruptions. And so that mix needs to be a mix of advertising, your biggest fans supporting you in some way, merchandise, there, in-show sponsorships, product placements. There are a range of different things you can do. But I got to ask you, where's your merchandise line? You selling a lot of T-shirts?
No, we don't sell any T-shirts.
Nope.
And to be honest with you, I was looking at the mailbox yesterday, and in the envelope came my sponsorship check, and it's from the sponsor, and you're thinking,
Nice.
you're like, woohoo, you can pay rent for another week, and but it's you're right. You always wonder when's the party going to be over? When's the sponsor going to call and say, okay, we're changing. We're going to take a new direction. We're going to do something different, and you're not part of that equation. Well, the light bill still has to get paid, and if this doesn't get delivered next month, it can be a challenge. I've attempted, in probably half-hearted attempted, at least on my tech show, to try to get some ongoing support. And I think now I've got enough support to pay part of the blogger bill and part of I have a executive producer who takes care of a lot of stuff for me now, and I'm able to pay him. So, but it's still not paying me. But it is an interesting. If you look at the guys like Adam Curry and John C. Dvorak, who are now doing No Agenda, it's 100% user supported show, and they spend a lot of time asking in every show to send them a check. So it can almost be more than the actual advertising itself. So to have a sustainable show or sustainable business, I hate to say it, but the advertising piece is still very important today. I wish it could all be user supported, because I've always thought, man, if every one of my listeners would just give me $2, $2 a month for every listener of the show, I'd be like, oh man, we could go 5 days a week. It's just but that's not reality.
Yeah, and look, so
Yeah.
you have the opportunity to do a mix, and whatever the right mix is. And look,
True.
sponsorships are great because you have a community built around what you're doing, and they trust you guys. And when you bring a sponsor in, you're obviously clearly saying it's a sponsor, but people will listen and watch and pay attention to their favorite hosts, creators, whatever, when they bring a sponsorship into the community. And the sponsors themselves, the smart ones, and it sounds like yours are, know that it's not just coming in and, scatter shot with, your shotgun and spraying your message around and then leaving. But if you're supporting something over the long term, then in many ways that sponsor is a patron as well.
True.
And they are allowing the community to do something that they wouldn't otherwise do, which is to enjoy this wonderful program. And being associated with that, and getting that message out, like you said, where you sat and watched the ads built into the videos on YouTube, your audience is going to be more inclined to listen to a sponsor message and probably buy things from that sponsor, and that's why they do it.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of this medium. It is that there's such a direct connection between you and your audience that when you bring sponsors into that trusted zone, uh, they get legitimacy conferred on them that they wouldn't get by just running a pre-roll or just putting wrapping a bus with a message. And that's very powerful. And that's to me, those are the sorts of things that are going to continue when you think about, advertising as a whole. It's the interruption advertising where you're like, oh, make that banner go away, or I don't
Hmm.
want to sit through that 3-minute pre-roll to watch what I want to do, or those are I think becoming more devalued, less valuable.
I think too, and Rob, I don't know if you're seeing this, but the pitch I'm doing a lot now is that with these sponsors, it's more than a sponsor spot. It's a relationship, and if you're just planning to come in and do an ad buy for 30 days, and you're doing a test to see if this is going to work, you're really not focusing on the big picture of what's possible here with a relationship, a true relationship with a creator, to be able to integrate the message that you're trying to get across into the audience,
Mhm.
not in this 2 minute with a kicker to go to some website. If we could get the advertisers to understand that the relationship, if they would have the same relationship with us, now that's the way I feel with GoDaddy. I've had GoDaddy from the beginning. I have a relationship with them. They treat me in this type of relationship the same way. It's like I have a family that's an audience, and GoDaddy respects my audience, and they let me do what I want to do. And we still have to make our numbers, don't get me wrong, but they also don't dictate how I put the message out. They leave that up to me to integrate it into the show. If we could just get advertisers to understand that they need to have a relationship with the creators versus just, okay, we're going to write you, this is what you're going to deliver, and this is the call to action. If we could get more of them to understand that this is more than a 30-day investment, I think we all would win. But man, it's hard to break that mold. It's really hard to get them to trust. That's what a part of it is to trust, to put the message of their product or service forward in a way that
Mm.
isn't going to be disruptive.
Well, and it's not just trust, it's giving up the ability to craft the message completely. And look, GoDaddy was a huge supporter of Revision 3 too. Love GoDaddy. I'm still a big customer of theirs. And but they came in a long period of time. We had to meet our numbers too, but GoDaddy gets that there are certain things in their message that they're important, but they realize that when you let your brand go and let creators take it and embrace it and bring it to the community and have it become a valued member of the community, it's not your message anymore. You're a part of it, but you don't own it. And that's the hardest thing for brands to do, is to let it go. Because you get these brand managers, they spent their whole career finally crafting and honing the message of their brand and what it is and its personality. They do all these studies and they're like, wait a minute, I'm going to give my brand to somebody else and they're going to interpret it in their own way for their audience? No, I can't do that. But that, in fact, is where the power of integrating into creator driven media like this, that's where you get the best results. That's why GoDaddy is stuck with you.
That's
And
right.
that's why you meet your numbers every month.
That's right. And believe me, I look at the numbers every week, and I'm thinking and I tell the audience, I tell them we're a little behind this month.
Yeah.
If there's someone new, hey, check this out, or and usually the audience steps up. But it's I usually don't have to make that call, but every once in a while I'll do that. But then
Well, and
again, it's yeah, it's a different relationship. They don't hassle me. I don't have a guy calling me every 2 weeks saying I need makeups or nothing like that.
Yeah.
We have a an email at the end of the month. They're like, this is how we did. this is something new we've got coming out. Check it out. Whatever it may be, and they just keep me informed, and I keep pushing the message. But and luckily they keep sending the checks. So, um,
Well, but think about, by the way, when you go to your audience and say, "Oh, we need a couple more signups on GoDaddy to make our numbers," how is that any different from saying, "Hey, can you click on the Patreon link or
right?
whatever and just sign up to support the show,
Yeah,
even a quarter a month, 50
yeah,
cents a month?" It's if you have that kind of power, and I'm not saying you want to do one over the other, but there are all ways that can be applied to keep the lights on and the TriCasters humming.
that's right. And Rob, I had thought that we would see a shift, that I would move that Patreon base a little bit more, and maybe I think too what happens is I'm not desperate. So in other words, the sponsor money's coming in, but let's just say, for example, they call me and say, hey, that was the last month, we're canceling, and I'm gonna go to the audience like, help! I'm gonna
I'm
be like,
panicked.
I'm gonna be in a panic, and maybe that would force people off center, where now they know I'm not in a panic. So they say, well, he's getting money from the sponsor anyway. He doesn't need any more
Well,
cash.
I don't know. Put out a maybe you go, and I'm not saying Patreon's the right one, although I love those guys.
Yeah,
There are certainly other ways, but maybe just have a little link at the bottom or at the end or on your website where you don't even talk about it, but it's just there,
yeah,
and you can just test and see what happens. Because again, it's all about the mix of potential revenue.
true, true.
And who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe you should do a T-shirt or a pocket protector, or I don't know what, but
Actually, I do have a Cafe Press store for the other show, but
oh yeah,
yeah,
cool.
yeah.
Well, who's done a great job at this is Darren over at Hack Five, and they've got this whole Hack Five store, and their Wi-Fi pineapple was a huge seller, and so he's actually been able to build merchandise that comes out of the show and what they talk about, and it's
Wow.
been great. It's been great for him. So there are things to do, and the guys that I work with at Vidcon, Hank and John Green, who started Vidcon, but also have all this like SciShow and a bunch of other things there, and they have a whole merch line called DFTBA, and they have a record line. That's why Hank's got like 5 jobs. But they do a good job when stuff comes out of the show, taking that and putting it on a T-shirt. Like if a huge cool quote comes out, they put it on a
Mm-hmm.
T-shirt, sell it.
Smart.
It is. I mean, this is if you're not part of the culture, it's going to be weird. But the next few days are Pizza Moss. There is a iconic image of John Green, of that's called that's a pizza image, and and they use this image in really bizarre ways. But the community loves the image, and every time they do it, they have limited edition stuff that just comes out for the 5 days of Pizza Moss that for some reason happens over Halloween, and I can't even tell you why, but it works and makes money. So those are the things you just got to think about.
Hmm. So one thing we haven't talked about is, of course, Hank's running PodCon, and this is kind of a new thing. I don't know. Have you had any dealings with this at all? Are you?
Yeah, I have. I mean, and it's so like I said, Hank's got a lot of jobs, right? And PodCon is not part of what it's not part of VidCon. It's part of one of Hank's other
Oh, okay.
businesses. But the team that I work with also works with PodCon, and so they're all very involved in it, and so I've become involved. And I mean, look, PodCon's super interesting. It's happening in December in Seattle, and yeah, you can see it right there. And the great thing is we've got a bunch of podcasters that are coming in. We've got it- it's really live shows, discussions about the medium, some of the stuff that we do at VidCon about online video, how to make better podcasts, how to we're bringing fans together with a number of their favorite podcasters. So you can go up there at podcon.com and take a look at all of the podcasters that are coming in. But it's really celebrating that art. And Hank's doing it. The McElroys and the folks from Welcome to Night Vale are all sort of the driving forces behind it. And they're also like, Monica's like, make sure you talk about Monica's our show producer who also works for me. It's like, make sure you talk about our podcast scrambles. We got these short shows that are mixing up podcasters and doing one-off podcasts on topics of their choice. It's sort of a, almost like a beat the clock thing that should be kind of fun. So, and Rob, thank you very much for supporting it and coming in and sponsoring. I know you'll be there. It should be a fun show. It's the first one, and
Yeah.
and we think think podcasting, remember the old days of the Podcast New Media Expo?
Yeah.
And
Oh yeah.
it's not the same, but it's a sort of a celebration of podcasting. And podcasting is in many ways, and you guys know this, it's facing a new revival, and it's awesome to see. And so that's kind of where they're going with it.
Rob, they put out the schedule, and I kind of glanced over it when they published it. What's your thoughts so far on on the schedule?
Well, I think it's good overall. I mean, I gave some feedback to you guys on it, and that's something that Todd and I commonly do with any kind of new podcasting conference that launches, and so I think a first year event is a first year event. I mean, you go into an event with a particular kind of view of the area or the industry that you're trying to cover with that event. And I thought it was really, really interesting that you guys picked Seattle as the first place to do it, because it's Seattle, in my view, is not really the hub or a hub for podcasting. Um, I would like it to be because I live up here, but it really hasn't had a history of being a strong market for podcasting. But what it is pretty strong at is kind of the public radio side. So I did notice that the event is has a fairly strong connection with the public radio side, which is a little bit in contrast to you look at some of the other podcasting conferences, like Podcast Movement or whatever, which really has kind of expanded across multiple segments of the podcast community. Um, but I do think that the public radio side is a terrific area to maybe to start out in and to explore and kind of bring those fans out, because there are very passionate fans that are associated or listening to public radio programs, and Seattle is a very strong public radio market. So I thought it was interesting, my conversations with Hank about the focus of the show and the team there, and I think it's terrific and it's great, and we're there to support it. But I do have a hope that the event can maybe expand beyond a little bit of a focus on public radio type content, but this mix that that the event has between fans and shows and maybe a conference about how to do this medium is an interesting direction that I see the overall industry going on. Yeah, even though you look at an event like LA Podfest, which started out as a fan festival, is kind of ceasing operations after this year. So it's interesting. Uh, I think it's a little bit of an interesting thing about the fan festival concept, and then combining it with a professional conference of sorts. And I see that there's been some interest, even in the podcast movement, about adding a fan festival as a component of the event. And I know that those organizers have talked about that, but I don't know if it I know, is the model that you guys are shooting for with PodCon, you think similar to what you've done with VidCon? It sounds like it is, but
Yeah, look, we're really, really good at building these three different tracks of events and doing them
yeah,
together,
yeah,
but appealing to these three different
yeah.
constituencies. So the businesses behind it, the people who want to create content in this medium and learn about it and how to build their businesses and their audiences and the way that they work with
Hmm.
others, and then the fans of those things. And so we, when we look at a new area, we look at it and say, which of those three things are going to be most important first, or should we do all three? And so that's where you
Hmm.
see, PodCon in many ways. When we look at it, we think we want to do all three. What, how do we do each of those individual ones? And then, we also think, how do we mix and match? So, for example, in VidCon in Europe, we did Amsterdam this year, and it was all three tracks. So we did creator and community and industry. We realized that for a bunch of different reasons, Europe's it's a fractured market. There are different countries and different languages and different fans and different creators. That the creator and the industry side were actually where the opportunity for us was. So when we do VidCon in Amsterdam in March of 2018, it's going to be for creators and it's going to be for the industry. And so it's going to be there won't be a fan community component. Now, that doesn't mean we
Hmm.
won't do that in subsequent years, because we still think there's an opportunity there. But That's where we think the opportunity is now. And PodCon, as it develops out, after your first one, you kind of assess. You're like, well, what worked? What didn't work? What do we do
Hmm.
better next time? What do we do less of
Yeah.
next time? I think you'll see that develop too. And I know your feedback has been very, very appreciated, and keep it coming because that's the only way we're going to get better too.
I was trying to figure out my flight schedule because we're gonna have a booth there as well, and we're gonna be, at the event. And it was I was reading through the schedule, and to be honest with you, I'm the polar opposite of Rob. I actually don't like public radio per se. I get very little value from it because I think most of the folks that are doing public radio are obnoxious snobs. But that's my opinion. So hate mail's coming. Um, so for me, they definitely are, well into the podcasting space and doing great things. But I'm not a fan of public radio per se. Um, but I don't know. I don't know why I feel that way about public radio. But anyway, just it is what it is. Um, so it for me, I think it's more about who's going to be there. I'm more curious. The content is one thing, but I want to be able to meet the people that are coming and find out what kind of if we're going to have a good mix of creators, people thinking about doing podcasting, the fans. It'll be cool for the shows that have fans come out and meet them. So it'll be a nice mix. Maybe it'll give the content creators there some perspective on what fans are really passionate about too.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's look, it's a great and vibrant medium, and one that we know has a huge and great potential. And we think having an event like this where we can celebrate all aspects of it makes sense. And so I think that's what you'll see in Seattle. And when you're there, it's the 9th and 10th of December,
Yeah.
and it'll be a lot of fun. So I encourage everyone to come, of course. So and I'm glad both you guys are going to be there.
So,
And
go ahead, Rob.
given that given that it's going to be in Seattle, it's really, because that's where I'm at. It's going to be really fascinating to me to see whether or not the event pulls on a regional, national, or primarily local level. You know, s- to see what kind of excitement that can be generated for podcasting in the Seattle market. So it is an interesting thing. I've been holding podcast meetups in Seattle for 10 or 12 years now, trying to build community around podcasting in the Seattle market. So I'm excited to see an event like this come to Seattle because there really hasn't been too many podcasting events come to Seattle short of like some live podcasting on stage and things like that. There's been like the Comic-Con Seattle event that's had live podcasts, like Kevin Smith has come up and done live stuff in the Washington State Convention Center, and I think he did a couple of episodes of his shows that he's done up there, and he's attracted 1,000 people to a live show that I've been to at that event. But that was really the last time that there was a large podcasting related event in Seattle, so I'm excited about it.
And actually, the last event I was at in Seattle, Rob, that I actually attended was Gnome Deck. So that's really dating myself. My
Gnome
Gnome
Decks, that's right.
decks, all right, Chris
Yeah,
Perillo.
yeah. Chris Perillo. Yeah.
I don't even
I
know
He's
think
what.
I
still he's still doing his thing. He's still doing, his uh video blogging stuff that he was
I
doing,
haven't checked in on him in
blogger.
years.
I know I should do that
Yeah.
too. Chris, we
Yeah.
worked together at Tech TV. When he came up
Yeah.
to, we brought him over and he ran a couple of our shows. But anyway, Chris is great. And I remember doing a Gnome Deck segment in Iowa because he's from Des Moines,
Right, right.
and another one in Lake Tahoe. I never went to the one in Seattle though.
Yeah, I did two in Seattle. I do have a question on. Had an interesting conversation with Leo at Podcast Movement. We were was Leo was being very sociable, hanging out, and I got to talk to him for maybe about 30 minutes at some event, and I'm getting the feeling that Leo has a plan on at what date he wants to retire, and maybe Lisa isn't going to let that happen. I don't know, but I get the feeling from him that he has a date, and I'm not going to share that. That's between him and his audience. But What do you think then? Leo is such a huge, he's the centerpiece around Twit. Do you think Leo can find a successor for Twit? Or when Leo retires, will Twit go away? How does a company that's so branded around an individual survive a transition like that? Or will he not be able to retire?
It's a really good question, and I've worked with Leo off and on since God, like 1994. So he is a unique talent. He's amazing, and he's built an amazingly interesting company around what he's done. I think it's hard. It's hard to transition something that is so personality driven around an individual to another individual, and we've seen very few examples where it's worked. One example, is when I was at Discovery, and before that, Revision 3, we worked with SourceFed and Phil DeFranco, and Phil actually did a great job with SourceFed, launching SourceFed with three key talent, bringing more talent in, having some of the talent phase out and other people come in. Very Saturday Night Live-esque, right? Where it's more of an ensemble and people come in and go out. There have been less successful examples in media where somebody's come in to replace an iconic host, and it's done well. Look at the Daily Show. I mean, Trevor Noah's done a good job, but it's not what it was when Jonathan Stewart was there. And so um, I think it's going to be tough. But there's Leo knows this medium better than anybody else, and he's so smart and so good at what he does that if anybody can do it, Leo can. And I have faith in him being able to do it, but I think it's going to be tough.
Yeah,
Um, so I don't know. I hope it works for Leo and Lisa, but we'll see where it goes.
it kind of reminds me of when I was listening to talk radio. I was listening to this late night show with the guy by the name Art Bell that did Coast to Coast AM. This guy was a master of
Oh yeah, Art
bringing
Bell, definitely.
bringing weirdos in, and it was the best 3 4 hours of radio, and I would lose sleep because of that show. I mean, thank God now it's a podcast. I can actually get it as a listen on my time. But when Art retired, it's like the community that was part of that group mourned his retirement, and then this new guy stepped in. His name's George Norrie, and George is
Nori,
still
yeah.
not Art. And I have a hard time even today getting as much engagement with that show as I had with Art. Art just was you everyone's unique, obviously, and it's near impossible to find a clone. But I think Leo's going to have to find some sort of clone. He's going to have to find some up and coming star that he can put in there, and then give that individual some room to breathe. It's going to be interesting to watch. I think originally maybe that's what Tom Merritt was supposed to be. But that didn't
Yeah.
work out.
Yeah.
Tom's doing his own thing.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
and
I think
you look at
Leo's
Tom, you look
known
at
for
Patrick,
many
a bunch of other.
years that if he wanted to either sell his company or move on, that he had that challenge in front of him, and I think it was something that he's been thinking about a lot. And I just like what we've said here, there is no easy answer, I think, to this dilemma. But I think one way or another he's going to figure it out. I mean, I have a lot of faith in Leo that he'll figure out some way to transition that company to keep it going. It's just too good of a platform, and I know he really wants to go deeper into video. Is what he wants to do, is the impressions. So, um, and maybe get more connection with TV or that kind of thing. I'm not really exactly sure what their path is, but it's going to be interesting to see Leo navigate these waters if he does plan on retiring at some point, which makes sense. We all have to
Yeah,
retire eventually.
yeah. Leo's such a great talent across radio, across video, across television, and everything. And I know whatever he sets his mind to do, he'll do a great job at it. But sooner or later, it's like, well, do I want to keep doing this for
Hmm.
every day forever? We'll see.
It's a
Yeah,
grind.
yeah,
It's hard
yeah.
work. A lot of people, and you look at his schedule. He takes 2 days a week off, but he's on camera 5 days a week. So that's a lot of work. But
Yeah, you got to feed the content monster.
that's a fact. And one thing I do have to say about what they're doing over there is I asked them, I said, "You buy your new building and did you lease? Because that's kind of usually a telltale sign of, where they're going to go." And they are on a lease there, but a long-term lease, but they didn't buy the building. I thought, oh, so, that to me was kind of because if you have a plan for 20 years, you buy the building. If you don't, you lease. So, I think they have a 10-year lease, I think. So, don't quote me on that, but anyway, that previous studio they had was incredible. My God, but they're pretty happy in the new one. So, but I
Well,
can't
Tim,
imagine.
I think that the obvious question here also kind of, I mean, we can wrap this topic up, but is it? I mean, you sold the Revision 3 company to Discovery Channel. Do you think Leo has an opportunity to do a similar kind of a deal with a major network?
I, if he does, and after we sold Revision 3 to Discovery, I went out and we ended up buying Phil DeFranco's company, which included Phil and SourceFed and other things. And, part of that deal was an extended agreement for Phil to, you know, stay around for an extended period of time and continue to work and build the company. If I were buying Twit and Leo's company, as if I were like, I'm going to put myself in the shoes of a media company going in to buy Twit, I'd want to say, well, Leo, you got to be around for 5 or 8 years. Like, I'm not
Mm-hmm.
going to buy it and let you go.
That's right.
Such amount
Yeah.
of value of the company is, I mean, there's a lot of valuable things there at the company, but a good portion of that value accretes to Leo being, on camera 5 days a week. And um, I don't see a path where a company would want to buy his company without that kind of guarantee.
Yeah, Leo is the face of Twit. So, and I think another thing I found interesting was that I got the impression that they're going to be doing more back in do stuff like CES and NEB. They're going to be back at those shows with a presence again. That maybe stepping back from that was not as good of a decision. But here's what I found about Jim, you've done tons and tons of trade shows, and you interview people, and you're really the master of this. And for me, having done CES and do NAB, it is this media monster that feeds the show or feeds my business for a whole year. I go there and make all these connections and make these interviews and it costs me a lot of money to do that event. Like minimum with even with the small crew I take and getting everything up, it's 25-30,000, and I go on a shoestring budget. We don't stay in the MGM and the whole 9 yards. So, but for me, that content from that show and the connections I make there feed the whole podcast for the rest of the year. So, for me, it's a big investment. In obviously you doing all these events and having done so many interviews, it's worked out well for you with lots of connections and everyone in the space.
Yeah, I think. Look, I think for a long time people thought, oh, the internet comes out, these face-to-face conferences are going to go away. People aren't going to go to events anymore. In fact, it's made them more important because when you're sitting at home or you're doing this and you're spending all your time staring at a screen, people need to connect with other people. They need to get out and find out what's going on. And events that do it well bring the whole ecosystem together. And so CES brings all those people together, and it's become such a huge thing now. NAB does the same thing on at a smaller scale, and that's what we aspire to at VidCon as well, is to bring everybody in the online video ecosystem together, whether it's creators or the folks building businesses or the fans. And there's an energy there, and there's a sense of, I have a better idea of where the world is going and who the key people are in the community that I build. So yeah, I think being part of these events is very important. I think you're smart to do it, and I think there was a hole at CES without Leo there.
Yeah, I agree. And like, I'm always jealous of their big booth, but when Leo does it, he rocks it out and knocks it out of the park, and as
Yep.
he should. This year, something I've really stepped up the crap table, and I hope I don't throw a seven. Is this year my team is going to stay at Rika Park. We're not leaving. We're going to focus 100% on startups, home automation. Everything in Rika Park is going to be what we cover this year, and we're going to if someone wants to come see us from South Upper, they can come to Rika Park and see us. We're not going to have a presence where we normally have in North Hall in the lobby and have the studio there, because what we found, and this is kind of, I guess it's tied to the video thing a little bit, is the bigger the company and the more handlers they have and harder the access is. And I want to get back down and find that 10 by 10 booth that's the next 100 by 100 5 years from now that is coming to market with cool stuff. So I'm just excited this year for the coverage we're going to do there, where we're completely focused on startups and home automation and everything kind of Eureka Park centress.
Yeah, I think that actually makes a lot of sense. I mean, look, I always found the excitement at CES. Sure, it's fun to go look at the big new monitors and
Yep.
the new things that are being rolled out by the big companies, but it's the smaller companies that are doing the innovative stuff all over CES. But they did a good job bringing a lot of them into Eureka Park, and I'm psyched to see what you guys end up with. But yeah, the people are playing. They're energetic. They're passionate. They're visionaries. They want to talk about it. They're going to come across a lot better to your audience than some corporate drone
Yep.
coming in and saying, well, we believe that we've maximized our revenue potential by expanding distribution and building a new plant in Taiwan.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're going to make better content too, probably.
Yeah, and those guys are there. They've tapped their credit cards out to be there. Number one, because not all of them have venture, and they are there to make it happen. So I'm excited to do it this year. But there's video for all formats. It just here I am talking tech stuff, but you look at the variety of content that's out there video wise. I think anyone that's doing a podcast today can put in a mix of video to, if nothing else, if it's not part of your regular show, to make it supplementary content that kind of again feeds the beast. You feed them back to the podcast. That's what I do. What do I do on every interview? And go to geeknewscentral.com and subscribe to the podcast, right?
Right.
So that's what it ultimately is to feed the animal. But Rob,
Yeah,
any
makes sense.
any thoughts?
Yeah, I wanted to change the topic a little bit.
Sure.
I was just curious what both of you guys think of the evolution of this new product from Amazon. It's the Echo Show, where they're bringing together the kind of capability of this smart speaker technology with a video display screen.
Have one sitting
I
here.
I just wonder if we're seeing a glimpse of somewhat a TV of the future here. I don't know.
Uh, Having one on the desk right here to the right of me, I don't watch any video on it. I watch weather.
Yeah,
Really? Okay.
yeah, I think Amazon love them. They're throwing a lot of stuff against the wall. I'm not sure this is the one that's going to do it, but they'll
Okay.
keep trying. I don't know. I've been trying to get Alexa working around my house, and it reminds me of the early days of voice recognition when uh, it just doesn't work. I don't know, maybe it's something with my voice. I was always able to break voice recognition when I was testing products because it never really did well with my voice. So
Yeah.
maybe that's why I'm not a big fan of some of the Alexa stuff that's going on. But what do you think, Rob? Are you using it?
Well, no, I don't actually use it. I'm just curious. I mean, it was fascinating that they came out with that. And I can't help but think that if you were to take that and put that into a larger screen television, that somehow we may have a better kind of voice activated voice system that's associated with our TVs to help us, more easily. I
Oh,
know that voice activation is nothing new in the the TV base. The Xfinity folks are building it into their remote controls. The Xbox has had it in there. I just wonder if there's something more to this kind of personal agent technology that's going to come to video to help improve that navigation and discovery in the video world.
and I think there will. I think voice absolutely is the one of the main interfaces of the future. But it's it's we're early on.
Yeah.
I tried to get the Alexa working with my Sonos speakers because I've got a ton of Sonos speakers around the house, and I'm all in on Sonos.
Me too.
And when I realized how stilted what I had to say would be to get it to actually work, it's like I just want to say, "Hey Alexa, can you play me some Grateful Dead on my Sonos?" But instead it had to be, "Alexa, play Europe 72 from the Grateful Dead on Sonos," or
Yeah.
getting Sirius XM to work. It was
Yeah.
just so we still aren't at that conversational level where, if I say something to you or say something to somebody else, they know it. We're getting there, and certainly we've got three big companies that are trying to make it work, and a bunch of other smaller companies. So, yes, Microsoft, Amazon, Google are all focused on this, but there's some others out there, and I've been working with a venture fund here in the Bay Area for the last few years. We invested in a company called Mycroft, and Mycroft, I think it's Mycroft.ai, is doing voice interfaces for everybody else. So it's open source stuff. If you don't want to use one of these people, you can go out and use them and bring it in. So some major car manufacturers that realize that if they give the car over to Microsoft or Amazon or Google, they've lost a big portion of their connection to their audience. They're using stuff like this so that they can have voice activated interfaces that they control and own. So yeah, this is going to be huge, and it's going to be how we interact with many things. But I'm not sure that any of the products on the market are the ones that are going to end up really being the
Yeah.
winner the way they are today.
Well, believe it or not, we're already at 90 minutes. I don't want to go over our time here too much, to respect your time there, Jim. But I want to make sure everyone knows that if you've been at all today intrigued about VidCon, I want you to go to vidcon.com. Their next conference is June 20th through 23rd in Anaheim.
Actually,
Uh,
wait, our next
oh,
conference is in Europe on the
oh,
22nd, 23rd, 24th of March, and then we're going to Anaheim. So
oh,
come to Europe
okay.
first.
So come to
It's all right.
if you're in Europe, then there's an event for you, and if you're in the U.S., VidCon in Anaheim. Anaheim's always fun in the summertime.
Yeah, it's the happiest place on earth.
That's a fact. And we had a good time with Podcast Movement in Anaheim. So, I'm gonna have to seriously think about coming to your event. I'm dabbling. So in this whole vlog thing. So if nothing else, just go out and see what other people are doing. I think would be cool. But
Well, you'll learn a lot too. I mean, we craft a lot of the content so that you can go back to the office on Monday and put it all in place immediately. And so that's been really important to me. And so there's a lot of value that comes out of it.
So just so everybody know, we're going to be here on regular schedule next week. The studio is going to be going through a little minor upgrade, but I'm not going to try to disrupt anything. But when you start moving cables, who knows? And but excited about what we're going to do here. But Rob, any closing thoughts before we punch out?
No, I just think it was great to have Jim here on the show. He's been a pioneer and a leader in this space for the video podcasting, video world for many years, and it's just great to have you on the show, Jim. Thank you for coming
Well,
on.
well, thank you guys for having me. It's been a blast. It's always fun to talk video and tech and geek out for a while on a Saturday morning. So thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you. And for everyone else that's been here, Jim, what's the best way for them to reach out to you if they want to ask a question or have a?
Just Jim at vidcon.com.
Well, that's as easy as it gets.
Yeah, exactly.
And then I'm Todd at blueberry.com or at Geek News on Twitter. Rob?
And I'm at Rob at Spreaker.com or Rob at RobGreenlee.com is the best way to get a hold of me. And then I'm obviously on Twitter as well at Rob Greenlee. So you can reach out there if you'd like to as well.
And if any of you were at FinCon this past week, hope you stopped and saw Mackenzie. But it was an interesting event. At least that's the word I got on the street. But the next event that probably all we're looking forward to is PodCon in Seattle for podcasters. And if you're within striking distance, come on up and let's all hang out together. But again, thank you for joining the New Media Show. My name is Todd Cochran. We'll see you next time. Everyone, take care. Bye bye.
Okay, bye.
Thanks.